Hi and welcome back. I've been gone for 2 weeks now. The first week I intentionally took a break, and then the second week I ended up coming down with whatever this cold and flu thing that's been going around, whether it's COVID or not this time around for everyone. It's brutal. I had a day where I was in bed all day and I slept for most of the day. And then the next day I kind of hobbled around and was able to do some stuff. And then slowly it just kind of evolved into a cold. Which I still am recovering from, so I'm probably going to have to take drinks of water and I might have to stop and cough every now and then. But whatever, I'm back. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened since I was able to last record, which is really stinks because it's stuff that I would have probably jumped on and talked about, like the Tucker Carlson January 6th footage, and how the White House does not want us to believe our eyes. They want us to disregard what we see and just listen to them. And I try not to tell people what to think. I like to present things and give my opinion, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you, you need to think this way. Don't believe your eyes, disregard what you've seen, and only believe what I tell you. I would never do that. And that's exactly what the White House is doing with the situation. And that's all I will go into on it, because that would be a whole tangent in itself that I'm not prepared for today. But maybe at some point, maybe if more stuff comes out from it, I will, because it is a very interesting topic. And I think that it just proves even harder that we have been lied to a lot. So before I get started, I guess, if you want to follow along on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, at fearmeitsbre is the tag. So you can find me there. You can watch the handful of episodes I've already got recorded on YouTube. Currently, I'm pre-recording things. I would like to be live at some point, but just with timing right now, it doesn't work out for me. And I would like to have a couple videos up this week, hopefully get back into the swing of things. So thank you for tuning in, and I'm going to jump into my handful of topics I have pulled up. The first one is about Rainn Wilson, who played the lovable, is that the right word? I don't know. Whatever Dwight Schrute is. Everybody loves him. Everybody kind of wants to slap him, right? So Dwight Schrute from The Office is played by Rainn Wilson, who is a bit of a woke fellow himself. He's a little weird, a little quirky. He wants to change his name because of something to do with climate change. I don't really pay attention because I don't really care. But he happened to critique a couple episodes ago on the HBO original The Last of Us. They had a portrayal of a Christian, which was very stereotypical to Hollywood, where the fundamentalist, Bible-thumping Christian leader of the group of survivors of the apocalypse is a creepy, perverted cannibal. And it just makes sense for Hollywood to do that, because most of the time when you see something like that, the Christian character ends up being the bad guy, which Rainn Wilson definitely pointed out in his tweet. So I'm going to go to the original tweet, which is down here. Right here. I do think there is an anti-Christian bias in Hollywood. As soon as the David character in The Last of Us started reading from the Bible, I knew that he was going to be a horrific villain. Could there be a Bible reading preacher on a show who is actually loving and kind? Yeah, he's not wrong there. Most of the time when a character like this David comes on the screen, I thought this watching the episode immediately. He was conducting a funeral for someone in their group who had died and was reading some Bible verses. And immediately I was like, oh, well, he's obviously going to be the bad guy because he's the pastor. He's the man of faith here. He's definitely going to be the bad guy. He also seems a little weird. And he was the bad guy because when this group of survivors was running low on food, it was winter, So whenever a member of their community would pass away, he would add them to the soup and not tell the people. And then toward the end of the episode, putting it graciously, he attacked the teenage protagonist and she had to fight him off and kill him in the end, to keep him from harming her, if you get my meaning. So yeah, I've looked into it, and a lot of people who played the game said like, oh yeah, David did all these things, but he wasn't a pastor in the game, he was just a guy. So Hollywood, the producers of the show, the showrunners, whatever, chose to specifically add that detail of him being a fundamentalist Christian leader, just because they probably thought, oh, ultimate villain trope, the religious fundamental person is the villain, which it's like, yeah, okay, I didn't see that coming. So even Rainn Wilson, as woke as he is, complained about that. He did follow that up with a tweet, though, where he kind of complained about people noticing that he complained about it. Like, oh, nice, that's him and his wife. Anyway, so let's go up here and find that tweet real quick, right here. Oh, I'm not doing this correctly. Anyway, and he just says, here's a couple of funny things about the anti-Christian bias in Hollywood. My opinion tweet was picked up as front page news by Fox News. Talk about a bias. An organization created as a corporate shill to create division solely for the profit based on culture war outrage. Print that. And then he says, also, I'm not even a Christian, which I think he's like is he an atheist? I'm not sure. I don't follow him enough to know. I don't even think I follow him on here. And then he also said, of course, it's true the evangelical political coalition is doing a great deal of damage to our country, banning books, banning freedom, denying inconvenient science, taking a grotesque anti-LGBTQ platform. So that's his opinion. If Rainn really knew scripture and knew what Christianity was about, he would know that any Bible-believing, scripture-believing Christian who actually follows the teachings of Christ would not be okay with homosexuality. The Bible explicitly condemns it. Even though I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. Anyway, that's his opinion on Christianity. He sees it as something that's not great. But then he goes on to say, most Christians I know are kind, accepting, loving, and seeking to make the world a better place. They should also be honored in the media. So even with his skewed version of what he sees Christianity as, he still recognizes that Christians aren't bad people necessarily. Like, he recognizes that Christians are just like everybody else, where you've got your good ones and you've got your bad ones, and it's not fair to always present them in Hollywood as the villains and the creepy cult leaders. Which 100% I disagree with his little portrayal of Christians up here, where he's like, oh, I still have to dunk on them. I can't say something nice about them. Totally. I disagree with this. However, I agree that there is this bias in Hollywood for some strange reason. Every time that there is a Christian in Hollywood, I mean, even in the most recent season of Stranger Things, they had all of the Christian-esque characters be the satanic panic. Oh my word, the main character is clearly doing demonic devil stuff. We've got to make sure. There's just this portrayal of Christians where they're creepy and they're not likable, and it's really telling, I think, to where scripture talks about how, you will be hated and you'll be persecuted, might not necessarily mean, you literally have Christians being killed for being Christians in other countries, and then in America you have kind of a character assassination and character persecution. Thank God nobody here is having their heads chopped off, but like I said, it's a character assassination is what it really comes down to. So that was interesting to hear Rainn Wilson talking about that. As odd as he is, he still has the right idea about the biases that Hollywood holds. So he also had another tweet that was kind of funny. I don't really understand the point of it. I don't know if he was trying to be facetious or if he was being serious. shared a video of a harvester, like logging machinery, right? Let's hop over to it. So he shared this video and captioned it, "Hey, look, the evil corporation from Avatar is real and has invented a new gadget." And it says, like, new tree cutting technology. Wow. I don't know.
Okay, we got another one. What is this?
And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not new technology. I literally have spent my entire life around these things. I'm not sure if he was being facetious, like I said, or if he was being funny, but this machine has been around since at least the 90s. So.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, I don't know what the point in him sharing this video was. He could just be making like a joke or something. I replied to the tweet, "I have literally spent my childhood riding in the back of one of these. They have been around for a while. Again, someone with no knowledge of the logging industry and the cultivation and actual preservation of forests feels the need to virtue signal against those evil loggers." Which, that is a huge thing with this, environmentalist save the trees thing, is when environmentalists picture the logging industry, they picture Fern Gully, they picture a smoking, charred landscape that looks something akin to like a forest fire wiping everything out. They picture animals being squashed and mutilated. And they picture just all the trees cut, everything gone, and just a path of destruction. As somebody that's been very close to the logging industry my whole life and has watched it, no, not everybody is going to go into it with the right mindset. But especially if you're Christian or have any claims to Christianity, we are told to be good stewards of the earth. And just like when you plant a garden, or you have a fruit tree, or you have a nice little flower bed in your backyard, you have to weed it. You have to cultivate it. You have to take care of it. So just like with a forest, if you are not cultivating it, you're going to have dead brush, dead branches, dead trees falling into the fresh new ones that are trying to grow up. And you have to go in and you have to cherry pick and you have to prune. Just like when you have an apple tree and you have dead branches, you prune the dying branches away, you take care of them, you cultivate that tree to make room for the new life. And my knowledge, that's not the right word, but my experience with the forestry industry is not one of a clear-cut smoking hillside, toxic sludge, Fern Gully nonsense. It's cultivating the land, taking care of the forest, and making room for that new growth to come up so that animals can have habitats. The forest can thrive and not be held back by its own, I was going to say its own trash, but like, you know what I mean? Like the dead things that just need to be removed. Anyway, I thought that was a funny tweet from Rainn Wilson and a ignorant tweet, I guess, because I still am not sure why he posted it. Doesn't make any sense to me. Like I said, that machine has been around for a while. I've ridden in them when I was a little girl. They were around before I was a little girl. So weird. I don't understand. Yeah, that was weird. It was really weird. So the next thing I'm going to get into is, it's a topic that makes me wince a little bit because it's, Drew Barrymore. I like her in movies, okay? I love Ever After, the Cinderella adaptation that she's in. I love music and lyrics with her and Hugh Grant, and I don't care what anybody says. Hugh Grant might not be a very nice person in real life, but he is a phenomenal actor and he is hysterical, and he is still one of my favorites. Celebrities are crappy people. That's just how it is. deal with it. But anyway, Drew Barrymore has a talk show, which I've never watched. I've never been interested in it. It all feels so fake. She acts really fake in it. She had Dylan Mulvaney on. And for those of you that don't know, Dylan Mulvaney is that day 522 of being a girl, transgender, who I don't think he's genuine at all. I don't think that he's doing this because, I want to be a woman. He is an actor. He was famous for being in like The Price is Right or something like that, or Wheel of Fortune, where he like danced around the stage. He's admitted that he's a stage actor and that he wants to be famous. I don't think any of this is genuine. I think it's him putting on an act because he knows, whether for good or for bad, it gets him a lot of press. And I definitely think there is something wrong with him because he did go through surgeries. I don't think that he has had the bottom surgery, which makes it even weirder, but he has shaved his face down to make it more feminine. So his jaw has gone from being this like very square jaw that he always has had to a more feminine, softer jawline. So regardless of whether or not it's just him vying for attention, he's definitely putting a lot into it. He's been invited to the White House. It's just a lot of nonsense has gone on surrounding Dylan Mulvaney. And what bothers me about this whole thing is a lot of these women claim to be feminists. They claim to be down with the patriarchy type women. And in this video, Drew Barrymore literally gets on her knees while Dylan Mulvaney is complaining to her about how hard it is to be a woman and how difficult all of the hate and attention is. And Drew just gets down and comforts him and is like, listen, the biggest hater is going to be yourself. It's how it is with me. And it just is like disarming to see a biological woman on her knees in front of a biological male, almost like giving up to this whole thing that is meant to replace women, to remove women, to feminize men, for one. And it's just so sad. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's long and nonsensical, but I'll show you a little bit just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So here we have Dylan Mulvaney.
Let me ask you about the negativity. How have you dealt with it? And what's an approach you take? What's your self-talk? What do you filter?
Yes.
How do you...
I still read the comments, but there is so much hatred directed at the trans community right now. It's everywhere. And I think the greatest weapon that I can contribute is trans joy and comedy and talking about hard, subjects and really intricate moments of a transition, and try to let everybody in to see that, I'm not a monster. I'm not.
Dylan literally threatened women recently because a lot of women got upset that he was on a podcast with Ulta Beauty, talking about wanting to be a mom someday. And then he talked about another time how he carries tampons for his female friends. And a lot of women were like, I'm sorry, but if you came up to me with a tampon, I'd probably punch you. That's creepy. And how he carries tampons, doesn't use them, but he carries them, and has talked about his Barbie pouch. And just, there was a really weird video where he was talking about how he's started to develop breasts from his hormones. And just, it was weird. And he's been partnering with a lot of these companies that are women centric. I think EOS, Tampax. I'm not sure if he for sure is partnering with them or not. Native deodorant has a line that he's partnered to advertise. All of these things, no, deodorant's not exclusively just for women. It's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying all of these things that they're marketing toward women, he is the woman that's advertising them. And it's just very weird.
Somebody that, is trying to do anything but be myself and be happy.
How do you stay on your own path? Where do you draw boundaries? Where do you find the strength to keep being the joy?
Well, I think having my chosen family and the people that I love to take care of me. But I also think there's something just about making sure that you don't put something out there before you're ready, and really just surrounding yourself with good people. It's interesting because I look at someone like you and I can't imagine anybody disliking you.
Oh, please. Do you know?
This is where it's very weird to me and feels very staged, and like, look how she just like dropped to her knees before him. That was odd.
Do you want to know, ironically, who dislikes me the most sometimes?
Who?
Myself.
Oh, me too. Oh. But I guess when you've asked me now, like...
Where's my mouse? I find it kind of funny that Drew was like, you know, who dislikes me the most sometimes? Myself. And then Dylan goes, oh, me too. It almost felt like he was talking about Drew Barrymore, not himself. But anyway, so like she's on her knees. She's like, oh, Dylan, I'm so sorry you have such a hard time being a woman. I'm so sorry about all these terrible comments about you. I'm so sorry. And this erasure of women in society, where womanhood is being hijacked and taken over by pretenders, really. It's just weird because it's like these celebrity women who, if they were the feminists that they claim they were, should be standing up like J.K. Rowling and saying, this is not right. These are not women. They are not going to take over our spaces. They are not going to take over womanhood. Are on their knees catering and bowing to this farce of a woman. It just doesn't make sense. And on top of that, Dylan Mulvaney spends this video complaining about the attention he's received. Listen, I don't want to hear you complain about attention and complain about haters and complain about bad comments on you. When you put yourself online, I forget who it was, I'd play her video, but this girl made a really good video where she points out that Dylan has documented from day one of being a girl, he's gone through his whole timeline, shared every intricate, intimate piece of his journey to womanhood, and just intentionally antagonized and jumped on this train. And if he wouldn't be doing this if he didn't want the attention, whether for good or bad, he's getting the attention he wanted. He's getting the fame that he wanted. So no, people aren't going to stop talking about you, and people aren't going to stop critiquing you. Just like any other person on an online space who chooses to put themselves out there, I have chosen to put myself out there. I have received some negative things from strangers, yes, and people that I used to be friends with. And my thing is, I'm not going to pretend and say like, oh, it doesn't affect me at all, because it affects everybody to a degree when people say negative things about you. Matt Walsh saying negative things about Dylan Mulvaney clearly affected him. I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt when I see former friends saying crap about me online. But I'm also at a point, I think, where I'm able to distance myself from it and accept it and say, look, I chose this. I chose to put my opinions out there. I chose to have people see it. I chose to have people critique me. Whatever. Either it's strangers who don't even know who I am, so why do I care what they think? Or it's people who clearly were not my friend to begin with anyway, if they're not giving me the time of day as a person to look beyond our political differences. So, just all of that said, you don't do something like this without not thriving, that's the word, without striving to get attention. Either way, I'm talking about him right now. He's getting what he wants. We're all either saying, oh, good job, Dylan, you trans voice, good job, or we're saying, look at this ridiculous person. Either way, he is getting the attention he wants. He's getting fame, he's getting fortune, and regardless of whether or not he really genuinely believes that he is a woman, or if it is just this giant, elaborate farce to gain attention, he's getting exactly what he wants. and women are bowing to it and licking the bottoms of his high heels at this point, conforming to it and accepting him and being everything that a woman should not be. But I don't remember if there's anything else interesting in this video.
You've asked me, like, what I would do to combat the hate, right?
Yeah.
But what do you do?
Okay, that's a great question. Now, I started...
You've been doing it a little longer than I have.
Well, you know, it's funny because when I was...
This is just so strange. Drew's got to be uncomfortable. I mean, obviously it's all staged and rehearsed. They wouldn't just do this, right? I think it gets to a point where she talks about...
time I was introduced to
movie
film
reviews.
review. Charlie's Angels, it could be an E.T., it could be The Wedding Singer. Yeah, you are pretty much guaranteed a 50-50. Some like it, some don't. So you've got to be willing to bear down and brace for it. And I think
picking your battles too.
Yes.
And sometimes I think the greatest response, because that just goes on to you,
This
it
part's
isn't
weird.
actually penetrating.
I couldn't agree more, because another thing that you're making me realize is to not carry on in spite of others.
I'm sorry, I just realized that I'm sitting on the floor with Drew.
I'm so happy to be doing this. Thank you for joining me on the floor.
It's just weird. I really don't think that... I think Dylan's got some screws loose, and I don't think that Dylan is genuine at all. I really think that this is all just... How much press can I get? Good or bad, it's still press. So move on from that, because I don't really... Anyway, so we're going to move on to the banking stuff. I'm going to borrow an article from Timcast News written by Hannah Claire Brimelow for that one. This was written... When did she put this out? Yesterday, so it's a little out of date, I guess, because, you know, with a breaking news thing, it's like, you know, I'm sure there's more stuff that's happened since then. I haven't had time to really dig into things, and I figured I'd grab her article to read on here because it's very short, sweet, and to the point. And I don't have a great understanding of economics and banking myself, so it helps. I was able to understand it, so, you know. Okay, sorry. Again, that cold. Whew. It's been about a week since I first came down with it, so hopefully everything goes away soon. So her article is titled, President Joe Biden tells Americans to have confidence in banking systems as additional banks fail. Silicon Valley banks and Signature banks were both taken over by the federal government and amid collapsing share prices. President Joe Biden is dismissing growing concerns sparked by the failure of two banks closely tied to technology and life science companies. The federal government took control of Silicon Valley Banks, a top bank in the technology sector, on March 10th after its share price rapidly plummeted. New York regulators announced on March 12th that they have taken control of Signature Bank, known for real estate lending and serving clients tied to the cryptocurrency industry. So we just had the second and third largest bank collapses happen back to back in the same week. That's not good. That's not good. The bottom line is, Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe. Your deposits are safe, Biden said during a press conference at the White House on March 13th. Let me also assure you, we will not stop at this. We will do whatever is needed, just like you did with the COVID vaccine. Am I not supposed to say that, though? We must get the full accounting of what happened, he added. Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe. I want to go all Inigo Montoya here and be like, you keep saying that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. When he keeps saying, it's safe, it's safe. Anyway, SVB's failure is the second largest in American history. Before a wave of depositors withdrew their fundings last week, an estimated 93% of the bank's $161 billion in deposits were not insured by the FDIC. According to the Washington Examiner, SVB's meltdown was partially caused by a chasm between its assets and what they were worth in the market. Eventually, SVB sold some of those assets, spooking investors and triggering a run on the bank. SVB is not alone, as banks across the United States were sitting on $620 billion in unrealized potential losses at the end of last year. The reason for this predicament is banks compiled a plethora of bonds and treasuries during times where interest rates were hovering near zero. But now the Federal Reserve has begun jacking up rates in an effort to combat inflation, which has caused many of those assets to plunge in value. All of SVB's remaining deposits were transferred to the Deposit Insurance National Bank of Santa Clara, which was created by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, while the FDIC insures deposits up to $250,000. The U.S. Department of Treasury has said it will ensure all SVB depositors will have access to their funds by March 13th. So that sounds to me like a planned bailout. Depositors will have access to all of their money starting March 13th. No losses associated with the resolution of Silicon Valley Bank will be borne by the taxpayer, said the Department of Treasury in a joint statement with the Federal Reserve and FDIC on March 12th. The agency also says the banking system at large remains resilient and on a solid foundation, in large part due to the reforms that were made after the financial crisis that ensured better safeguards for the banking industry. The federal government is now also taking control of Signature Bank and guaranteeing all of its deposits. As of December 31st, Signature Bank had about $110 billion assets and $88.6 billion in total deposits. The bank operated 40 branches across New York, California, Connecticut, North Carolina, and Nevada. The FDIC established the Signature Bridge Bank, NA, to maximize the value of the institution for a future sale and to maintain banking services in the communities formerly served by Signature Bank. The transfer of all the deposits was completed under the systemic risk exception approved earlier today. All depositors of the institution will be made whole. No losses will be borne by the taxpayers, said the FDIC in a statement. Shareholders and certain unsecured debt holders will not be protected. Any losses to the Deposit Insurance Fund, DIF, to support uninsured depositors will be recovered by special assessment on banks as required by law. All of Signature Bank's senior management has been removed. This is an unusual circumstance, New York Governor Kathy Hochul said at a press conference in Manhattan, per ABC. But the main message I want to deliver is New Yorkers should have confidence that their money is secure and whether they have chosen to bank, and wherever they have chosen to bank, that is protected. Silvergate Bank, so I'm assuming this is that third bank, an entirely crypto-focused institution, failed on March 8th, but was not subject to FDIC intervention. The California-based bank has said it will repay all deposits in full. The Federal Reserve and J.P. Morgan Chase have offered additional liquidity to the First Republic Bank, which saw a 64% drop in shares on March 13th, continuing a dramatic downward trend that began last week. So the whole thing about the $250,000, if you were a part of that bank and your total deposits were below $250,000, which is most people like me, right, who don't have money because, economy, people like me would get our deposits back. So average Joe, this isn't necessarily really going to affect. Who this is going to affect, however, are people like the big billionaires, the big tech corporations, anyone big in California who is a millionaire or billionaire, who's cozied right up to the president and the government. That's who this affects. That's who this gives issues to. So, of course, the government wants to bail them out, right? And in bailing them out, it will take money from the average banking person like me, right, who has money in that bank, and it will give it to the millionaires and billionaires and big tech people because they have more than $250,000 in their bank account. As we've seen from history, bailouts cause financial collapse. 2008, that was a very big culprit. So the other skepticism that I've seen on this topic regarding the banking issue is Biden's quick response, the next day, being like, we've got it. We will fix this problem. Don't worry about it. Your money's safe. Everything's fine. I'll bail you out if I have to. Sorry. And then let's go back, a month, to Palestine, Ohio, who were requesting federal relief. They were requesting aid. They were requesting bailouts. They still have toxic water. And what did Biden do? Nothing. He flew to Ukraine and announced he was going to be giving them more money and ignored Palestine. But when his friends in high places have issues and need a little bit of a push or a little bit of help, he's right there for them. So it shows you that this administration does not care about Ohio, who did not vote for them and do not particularly care for them, a mostly red state. When they're in trouble, they do nothing. But when blue billionaire California is up to their necks in water because, oh crap, the bank failed, they immediately rush to help. And that's very telling. I would not at all say that Joe Biden is a populist, because look who he's helping. He's not a man of the people. This administration is not for the people. Clearly, it's for the people who pay. So that's a little frustrating to see that. I think, what was it? Was it, what's that like really popular site? BuzzFeed? Was it BuzzFeed that had most of their money in this bank? So that's interesting. That goes to show the big tech people. Anyway, so that's very interesting to me. So ideally something like this is not going to affect the average bank user. Without like giving away too much information about my location or where I bank or anything, I actually got an email from my bank, which is pretty small. I just found it funny that they had to send out an email from their CEO being like, your financial assets are safe and secure, just as they have always been for over a century and a half. We've persevered through world wars, the Great Depression, the dot-com bubble, the Great Recession, the financial crisis of 2008, COVID-19. All are safe here, all as a safe haven for people's money. As an FDIC insured bank, deposits are automatically insured up to $250,000 per depositor per FDIC insured. So I got an email from my bank being like, don't panic. It's okay. Which I found interesting. A lot of people have said that their banks have been interestingly busy since all of this happened. So that kind of brings me to like my final thoughts, which are, what is the American dollar backed by? Well, if you Google it, which I have, it literally, the Google definition of, what is backing the American dollar said the good faith of the people. There was a time where we were on a gold standard, which we have been taken off of twice. There was a time where our money had meaning and our money actually was backed by something tangible and divisible. Whoa. And those days are no longer. And that's part of why we're in this mess, right? So American money not being backed by anything physical violates the 6 characteristics of money. And the 6 characteristics of money I'm going to go through real quick. Durability, the ability to withstand wear or damage. Portability, the ability to be easily carried or moved. And I'll admit, paper money, debit card, a little bit easier to carry around than bricks of gold or mounds of coins, right? It makes sense, I guess. Divisibility, the capacity of being divided into smaller parts to make transactions of all sizes possible. Uniformity, each individual unit must hold the same value. For example, if you were using cows as a monetary unit, as a form of trade, you might have 2 cows that are the same age, but one might be sickly, skinny, and not at all hold the same value as the one over here who's nice, plump, juicy, and probably has 2 years worth of meat on it. So, using cows as a monetary system, while it's been done, is not necessarily the best way to go because it's not uniform. Limited supply. So in order to retain worth, there must be some sort of scarcity. Paper money is not scarce. They're printing it out of their butts right now. The more money there is in circulation, the less it is going to be valued by the economy, and the more inflation will rise. Basic economics. Acceptability. So the tender, it must be considered legal tender, an acceptable form of payment, usually issued by a government or country. It has to be valued enough to be accepted as a form of payment. So I can't just walk up to you with an empty gum wrapper and say, I will take that bag of rice, please, because that is not valued. I might value the gum wrapper. I might be like, look how pretty and shiny it is. This thing's worth so much to me. Now give me that 5-pound bag of rice. The person I'm buying the rice from is going to be like, dude, that's literally trash. I'm not going to let you purchase a bag of rice from me with a gum wrapper. So it's got to be something that, as a whole, the majority of people have put intrinsic value in. So that is why money used to be backed by gold. And the gold standard was a monetary system where currency, for example, the paper money that we currently use, has or had a value directly linked to gold. So paper money would be converted into a fixed amount of gold. A country that uses the gold standard will set a fixed price for the gold and buy and sell gold at that price. So we started using paper money in place of gold, specifically July 17th, 1861. The government passed an act permitting the Treasury Department to print and circulate banknotes to rapidly finance the American Civil War. Because war was happening quickly, it was hard to transport gold, paper was easier. They were known as greenbacks and eventually demand notes, and they were swapped out for legal tender notes in 1862. We started using paper money from 1863 to 1929. The government would allow banks to issue their own notes called national banknotes, and they created through this a centralized currency instead of individual state currencies through the National Banks Acts of 1863 and 64. The Federal Reserve Act was passed by Congress in 1913 and established the Federal Reserve System through this act. Federal Reserve banks were allowed to issue Federal Reserve Bank notes. By 1914, the Fed began issuing Federal Reserve notes, which are what we use today. The federal government could not keep up with the melting down and changing of the compositions of the alloys in coins because of the desperation caused by the Civil War. People were melting down their coins and they were trying to keep value. They were trying to melt things down and add other metals to the coins to spread their money a little bit and counterfeit it so that they had some form of money in this whole endeavor. So the solution was to switch the national currency to paper money so the government could avoid purchasing extra silver and extra gold to replenish all that had been melted down. So in 1933, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, banned the private ownership of gold. Production of the quarter, half eagle, and double eagle coins, the quarter eagle, half eagle, and double eagle coins halted, facing the populace to now use paper money for larger transactions instead of these large coins that held all this value. It was now switched to paper. And originally, in 1913, the law did require the Federal Reserve to hold gold equal to 40% of the value of the issued currency. So, for example, in 1913, 1 ounce of pure gold cost $20.67. So, March 1933 brought along the banking crisis. The Federal Reserve was domestically drained of its excess gold because the people preferred to have the physical gold over the paper currency. The people didn't have a trust in the paper currency. They trusted the physical gold because they knew that's what held the value. FDR declared it a national banking holiday in 1933 because the Fed could no longer back its currency with gold. The gold standard was formally suspended in April. Exports of gold and converting of currency into gold was then prohibited by the government. The Agricultural Relief Act in May 1933 reduced the gold content of the dollar by 50%. So instead of 40% being required to be backed by gold, it now reduced it by 50%. Gold clauses were then created to guarantee contracts would be paid and repaid eventually in gold. This caused the value of the dollar to go down since the president could now change the value back it with silver instead. So at any time, the president could say, you know what, I only want it to hold 12% of its value in gold, this paper money, instead of the required standard, which was the gold standard. So in October of 1933, the gold purchase plan began with intentionally devaluing the American dollar. The government authorized the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to buy gold at continually increasing prices. Reflated goods prices of American products encouraged exports, so we were putting stuff out, and discouraged imports. And then in 1934, when Roosevelt felt that things were okay again, he resurrected the gold standard, which again was, we were taken off the gold standard again by President Nixon about, 30 years later or something like that, and we have been off the gold standard ever since. So instead of having our money backed by physical, tangible, divisible, scarce material, even silver would be better at this point. Our money literally only holds the value that we are willing to put into these pieces of paper, and these digital numbers at this point as well. Something similar happened with Venezuela, where they have wheelbarrow loads of money that amount to nothing. Paper money that's just useless. I mean, it does nothing for them. And we're hitting a point in America where we're getting close to that. Because you can't, excuse me. Sorry about that. You cannot back money with thin air. You just can't. It doesn't make any sense. Unfortunately, ever since we went off the gold standard, it has caused inflation to rise, because now we can just print money out of our butts whenever we feel like it, backed by nothing. And the only thing keeping America as thriving and rich as it is the fact that we don't import anything. We are of no benefit to the world other than the American dollar. Energy, we trade in the American dollar. Russia, China, Saudi Arabia all have to convert their rubles and whatever their money is to the American dollar to be able to buy and sell energy, which is one of the biggest reasons that we're all at odds, is they don't want to do that anymore. And if that happens and they're able to convert the purchase and sales of energy to something other than the American dollar will now become useless, and our economy will be even worse off than it already is somehow. So that's one reason why President Trump brought oil production and things like that over to America, to make us independent from Russia, from Saudi Arabia, from China, and not depend on them for energy. And now that we have gone back overseas with all that, we require the imports. We need things from overseas. We are not a self-sustaining country anymore, as large as we are, and we should be, but we're not, because the only thing that we're importing is the American dollar, which is losing its value every single day. Thank you, government. Thank you, Federal Reserve. So with that, I will leave you. I think I'm done for today. This one went a little bit longer, I think, than I normally do. Hopefully it was all listenable too. There goes my words again. Again, I can be found fearmeitsbre on most platforms. I also have a Substack as well, if anyone's interested in reading my written work. I actually just came out with one recently, about children and the transgender children issue. So if anyone's interested, that can be found in my Substack, which is also called fearmeitsbre. I hope to put out at least one more video this week. If anyone wants to throw any ideas my way, definitely send me a DM on either Instagram or Twitter. I will look at those. Any ideas for topics or anything like that. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching, and I hope everybody has a great rest of their evening, and I will see you all next time.